Hoosier Nation, Matt and we've slept on the news for a day just to let it soak in, just to absorb everything. But two big pieces of news coming through over the last few days. Indiana has gotten commitments out of the transfer portal from two guys who will hear their names in the starting lineup on opening night. Myles Rice and Oumar Ballo commit to the Hoosiers, a couple of the most highly ranked, and regarded players in the portal. We're going to talk about what they're going to bring to the table this upcoming season, what this means about Indiana basketball. Is Indiana basketball kind of back? And then what's more to come? What's left? What's coming up around the corner here? Indiana still has a few spots to fill as far as their scholarships are concerned. We're going to cover all of that and so much more here on episode 327 of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. We're recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Wednesday, April 17th, 2024, where I am your host, Nathan Krishnan. Here with me tonight from China is my normal co-host, Matt Lukens. Matt, how's it going halfway around the world? I'm sure you got the great news just like all of us. So how are things going in China? And then what are your thoughts about Myles Rice and Oumar Ballo?
Here's my green tea. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Yeah, things are going well. I slept all day yesterday, having arrived and sleeping on the great news that was Oumar Ballo
Yep.
committing, and then of course I've been very happy with the Myles Rice news as well. Of course, and that can't be underestimated at all. But yeah, so everything's going very well.
Wonderful.
I'm super excited. I've seen a lot of people question whether Oumar Ballo should even be an Indiana Hoosier. Like why go get a center? I have lots of opinions on this. And I think the staff is cooking quite well. Correct me if I'm wrong. Oumar Ballo, by the way,
Yeah.
that's how you spell his name.
Yep. Basketball. Ballo. Yeah.
Got Ballo, yeah.
Ballo so hard. Yeah.
He was a first team Pac-12 selection, correct?
Yeah, like a high major conference, for a team that was a 2 seed in the tournament.
Yeah. So we
Mm.
got two. We're building the first team of the Pac-12 from last year. That's
I'll be honest, that kind of crossed my mind the other day. Even going back to Kel'el Ware's edition, Indiana's adapting better than any other team in the Big Ten to the four newcomers from the Pac-12, right? I mean, Indiana's going to have scouting reports much more advanced than the rest of the conference, especially if you get Kaden Carlisle as well. It's going to be where I'm sure is going to be on the phone, and you're going to have Ballo, and you're going to have Rice, and you might have Carlisle. I mean, Indiana's going to know these Pac-12 teams, and you might as well if you're going to face them 5, 6, 7 times next year.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll take the experience, and obviously I'll take the talent as well. Both these guys are very talented. Um, Funny though that Myles Rice is from Georgia and Omar is from Mali. End up in Pac-12 territory and then come back east. But that's just kind of how life goes. Trust me, I know you end up in random places at random times. And so yeah, it's all good in Hoosierville right now.
Yeah, Myles Rice comes over from the Washington State Cougars. Of course, the Cougs now out of the Pac-12. They're going to have some sort of arrangement with the Mountain West for the upcoming season in all likelihood. Rice has 3 years of eligibility remaining. Crazy story, folks. He's somebody who has been in college basketball for a few years, actually. But a couple years ago, in his first official season in college basketball, he redshirted. In the following season, he beat Hodgkin's lymphoma. Successful victory over that awful disease. Rice then this past season was named Pac-12 Freshman of the Year, All Pac-12 first team for a basketball program that doesn't make March Madness that often, and he was a critical component to Washington State's excellent season that they had this past year. Rice is going to start, folks, and I don't know who's gonna join him in the backcourt this upcoming season. Look, to me, I don't care as much if it's Trey Galloway or Kaden Carlisle, as long as both of those guys are on Indiana next season. But Rice is going to start. Yasir Roseman deserves a lot of credit for this recruitment. Roseman and Myles Rice have had a connection for quite some time. Once Rice put his name into the portal, Roseman really, really took the bull by the horns as far as that recruitment was concerned. And you now see Myles Rice posting on Instagram and really leaning into the Indiana Hoosiers and the culture that the Hoosiers have built here as they tried to rebound from an awful season this past season. Last year, Myles Rice went out there and he played he played pretty well. He played over 1,000 minutes for the Washington State Cougars, 33 minutes per game, shot 44% from the field, effective on and beating his man and facilitating for his opponents. Great free throw shooter, but he does struggle from deep. 27.5% that's been called out. He suffered a rough slump at the end of the year last year, so that contributes to it to some degree. I like his 3 rebounds per game coming out of the backcourt, aggressive as far as the steals game is concerned, and he scored 15 points a game. Not much of a fouler either. Matt, pros and cons as far as Myles Rice is concerned. What do you think he's going to bring to the table next year that's going to help this Indiana basketball team? And what are 1 or 2 areas where you say, man, I'd like for him to really work on that this upcoming offseason?
Well, I think we're talking about Myles Rice's numbers here, right? Like I think exactly. I think when you look at the numbers in depth, just consistency. If you go and you actually look at his game logs, and I'm looking at it right now on ESPN, you're gonna see that his last like 10 games, I don't think he made a 3.
It was rough.
It was rough. Yeah, I think he went 0 of like 30 or something, which absolutely tanked his 3%.
I think literally it was 0
average.
for 20. I think literally 0 for 20.
Yeah. So yeah, that tanked his 3-point percentage considerably, because before then he was shooting somewhere in like the upper 30s, right? And so you lose almost 10% off the top there, maybe even a little bit more, just because he went into a shooting slump. And if I'm going to be honest, and I don't like making excuses for anybody, but the dude is coming off of chemotherapy.
Yeah.
So I think at the end of the season there, his legs kind of gave out on him, and he was still doing a lot to help his team win. Right. He just wasn't, the legs weren't in it on the shot. And if you go back and watch those games, you can kind of see it. The mechanics aren't great. If you watch shots, sometimes he just kind of over rotates his body, his lower body when he shoots the 3. And that's something maybe he can work on in the summer. But if it goes in, which he showed at the beginning of the year, basically 3/4 of the season at Washington State, if it goes in, I mean, you can't really argue with the kid, right? You can't. The end product is the end product, and we need him making 3s in a Hoosier uniform. And sometimes it's like, I want to fix his shot. Well, if you fix his shot and then you mess up his shot permanently, how is that going to work? But then also you add in the fact that he was a freshman, right? His first year playing college basketball. Exactly. He's gonna improve as a sophomore. They all do. This is what happens. I mean, we saw that right last year with Malik Renew, going from not really shooting the ball as a freshman and not really even getting that much time as a freshman to becoming the second best player on Indiana's roster last year.
Yeah.
And this guy had a much better freshman year than Malik Renew did. And so you can probably imagine what's the expected jump out of him when Kanan Carlisle or Kane, is it Kanan or Kanan?
Well, I've talked about this. I'm not gonna figure out how to pronounce his name until he commits.
Okay, Carlisle.
Oumar Ballo. We got Oumar Ballo down.
Got Oumar. Okay, Carlisle.
Look, I'll get to it when he commits.
It's the ex-substitute teacher in me. I can never say names correctly. But when Carlisle commits, and you know how I said that? This is when he commits. We'll talk about his 3-point shooting numbers as well. Again, freshman going into a sophomore year is going to be a guy that's going to improve naturally as it is, and a guy that was first team all Pac-12 freshman, and I think an honorable mention for all Pac-12 as a freshman. Again, he's going to be a guy that's going to be a huge addition to this team when he commits. Not if, when. And so the same thing with Rice. Like, Rice is going to bring just a really good transition threat, really good from 3, or should be, especially with another off season to kind of get his legs back underneath them. And, I've talked about this strength and fitness staff a lot, but our players are almost always ready to play 40 minutes a game. Seriously. I mean, everybody on this team is super fit going into the season. Now, whether I think that they train the wrong muscle groups or that they overtrain during the season. That's something else.
Mhm.
But they're ready to go. I mean, Trace with this, strength and conditioning staff was playing 40 minutes a game an entire season, right? So I think Myles will be in good hands with the strength and conditioning staff, kind of getting his body back to I'm assuming he was probably like 85, 90% last year as the season went on, and closer to 100 this year. And so that way his shot will look a little bit more sustainable going out, and shooting will be a little bit more sustainable throughout the season this year.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. He played 76 out of 80 possible minutes in the NCAA tournament this past year. Of course, the Cougs not only made the tournament, but they beat Drake in the first round, and he was integral in Washington State's defensive coverage against an outstanding mid-major player in Tucker DeVries. So this is somebody who I think will be able to help the Hoosiers on both sides of the court. Now you're going to sit here and say, "Come on, what about the threes?" Look, it's going to be a mixed bag. I think with Myles Rice, what I'm really paying more attention to is how he beats the defender off the dribble, something Indiana did not have, especially when Xavier Johnson was out last season. Late in the shot clock, do you have a shot creator? It doesn't have to be a three-pointer. Can you get someone who finds a way to pump fake and one dribble into a mid-range jump shot? Can you find a guy who, with 5 seconds to go in the clock, can whip his man and get inside for a layup or draw a foul? Can you find someone who can move the basketball to an open teammate? And Myles Rice answers yes to all three of those questions. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a three-point shooter. Indiana's going to try to nail that skill set down. I think if Myles Rice gets you to somewhere in the low 30s next year, that's going to be a big win for this basketball program. And he'll be a first-team All Big Ten player if he gets to 34, 35% from three. So, I think if that's what Mike Woodson and Kenya Hunter and Yasir Rosemond and Brian Walsh and the staff are pitching, if that was part of the pitch to Myles Rice, I think this is going to be a really, really good fit for both sides. As I sat here and I thought of, who are players that Myles Rice kind of reminds me of. It's a little bit funky, but I think about someone like someone like Tyrese Halliburton, not so much in the skill set that he brings to the table, but someone who's going to join this team and really give a new youthful energy to this Indiana backcourt, because it's been a lot of stale parts over the last few years. So, somebody's going to come in, and whether it's by passing the basketball or hitting the three or beating a defender and then setting somebody up, that's someone that quickly came to my mind. I also see some similarities in the physical build as well. Halliburton, a little bit taller, a little bit bigger, but I can see sort of a collegiate discount version, not just on the court, but off the court, as far as what Myles Rice brings to the table. Indiana desperately needed leadership last season. Badly. Not from the coaches.
From the players.
And I went out and I listened to the big podcast that you all listen to. I listened to Assembly Call. I listened to Hoosier Hysterics, and no one seemed to remember that last year, unlike 2 seasons ago, Indiana had a gaping leadership void. And whether it's Myles Rice or Oumar Ballo, I think both guys are going to come in and really help that aspect of the game in case you lose 3 games in a row in Big Ten play, in case you drop a rough one in non-conference play, and how you go, how can we bounce back? That's going to be a big game changer, in addition to the growth that you get from Trey Galloway or Malik Renew or Mackenzie Mbako. Matt, we play this game all the time as it relates to pieces that are new to this Indiana basketball team. But as you think about Myles Rice, who are 1 or 2 current or former Hoosiers, college basketball players, NBA basketball players that cross your mind as you think about Myles Rice?
Oh, that is a loaded question.
Sorry. This is just for the comments on YouTube.
Yeah, I get to get yelled at again for. I actually I should know that this question is coming every single time, and yet every single time I am very unprepared for this question. Shoot. Player comp.
175 guard. Could do a few different things, but maybe struggles to shoot the ball a little bit. Another guy I was thinking about as I'm watching this Sixers Heat game, DeLon Wright. Like, I was thinking about him a little bit.
We're gonna do a little trolling.
Ooh.
That's what we're gonna do with this one because I think Myles Rice himself is a very unique player to IU basketball in the last couple of years. But I'm gonna say he's the good version of Devonte Green.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's what I'm gonna say. He's the taller, more lanky
Oh,
cancer survivor version of Devonte Green.
wow. I don't even know where to go with that. I'm gonna just take that. All right, sounds good.
That's what I'm gonna say.
Sounds good.
There's no rebuttal to that.
Yeah, no, there absolutely isn't. I
It's
was
because I was
interested.
not prepared, and that's the
Ooh,
first thing that came to
no,
my
that's
head.
all right. I was looking through Myles Rice's game logs last year. How about a 35-minute, 21-point performance against Mississippi State? That was an NCAA tournament team in a neutral site where Rice not only had 21, but he also had 3 rebounds in that game. Didn't get into foul trouble. I thought that specific performance stood out. I thought he was very good last year in Pac-12 play, and then you dig in a little bit deeper and you say, wow, he was really good against Oregon a couple of times. He was excellent against Stanford in a road game. And you look out and you look and you see like Rice was not just good in Pullman where the Cougs play.
No, no.
He was contributing to his team in road games, neutral site games. I mean, how about double figures in 3 of the last 4 games that Washington State played across the Pac-12 and the NCAA tournaments? He's going to turn it over sometimes. He's going to miss some threes. But as far as the big scheme package, the big picture package is concerned, Myles Rice was one of 24/7 Sports' top 20 transfers available, and he's now going to be an Indiana Hoosier. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing his contributions to this basketball team next year. Unless there's a complete shock, I'm expecting him to start, and I'm expecting him to endear himself to Hoosier Nation very, very quickly as it relates to his future here in Bloomington. Folks, before we get to Oumar Ballo, it's time for Who Won the Week this past week in IU sports. And we're going to give a shout out to Indiana women's basketball legend Mackenzie Holmes, who earlier this week, after Caitlin Clark went first, and Cam Brink went second, and Camila Cardoso went third, Mackenzie Holmes went 26th overall and was selected in the 2024 WNBA draft. The Hoosiers don't normally get players selected in the WNBA draft selection process. Mackenzie Holmes, and seeing her get taken was absolutely awesome. I can't wait to see her do great things with the Seattle Storm. I think it's going to end up very similar, actually. I think it's going to end up very similar, actually, to Trace Jackson Davis and his path that he took, the Golden State Warriors, where everyone's saying, oh my God, how did he go so late? And then you go out and you say, wow, Seattle, much like Golden State, is an organization of the WNBA that knows what the heck they're doing. They've been one of the more successful franchises in the WNBA over the last couple of decades. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing Mackenzie out there in the Pacific Northwest. It's kind of a trade, right? Like we get Myles Rice from Washington State. So, now Mackenzie Holmes will go out and send out the goodwill to Hoosier Nation that lives out there in Seattle. So, I'm looking forward to seeing her do some big things. Grace Berger, of course, was selected 7th overall in the 23 WNBA draft, and she's had an excellent first season with the Indiana Fever. So I'm expecting Mackenzie to do big things. It's going to take a couple years, but I think she's going to do awesome things. Of course, Mackenzie posted an update out as far as her knee was concerned. So, I'm looking forward to seeing her doing big things. Folks, a reminder, if you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. Your support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube at Indiana HQ, as well as at the Hoosier Sound. Of course, the news on Sarah Scalia is that she did not get drafted. I think that's absolutely absurd. Bunch of WNBA teams missed out on that. I'm looking forward to seeing her wear a WNBA jersey this upcoming season as an undrafted player. I think she's going to walk onto a team somewhere and do awesome things this upcoming year.
She'll figure it out.
Matt, Oumar Ballo committed to the Indiana Hoosiers on Tuesday, joining his fellow Pac-12 brother Myles Rice. As we mentioned earlier, Oumar Ballo is how you pronounce it. Some folks have struggled with that over the last 24 hours. We're going to say it once and we're gonna say it again, and we might screw it up again before this is all said and done, but Oumar Ballo is how you say his name. If you're curious, you can head over to his webpage on the Arizona Athletics website, and they have him actually saying his name for all of you. So that's how you can go and find him there. A 7-foot, 260-pound center from Kolikoro, Mali, through the University of Arizona, all Pac-12 first team, just like Myles Rice, and formerly the most improved player award winner in the Pac-12. Matt, he's going to start at center for Indiana alongside Malik Renew at forward and Myles Rice at guard and Mackenzie Mbako. And then we'll see what happens to the last piece. What were your initial thoughts as you heard Oumar Ballo announce his commitment to the Indiana Hoosiers?
I mean, I was ecstatic because
same here.
I mean, it's the second year in a row we've gotten a top 3 transfer, right? And this guy's top 1, right? The second year in a row that Indiana's gone out into the portal and identified that, hey, not only do we have what it takes to go and compete with the likes of Kansas and Duke and Kentucky and now Arkansas and all these other places that are going to be spending lots of money, Texas,
Illinois, and the Big
Illinois,
10, right?
Yeah, all these places are going to be spending money on transfers that we can not only compete, we can beat them, like straight up, like in a recruiting battle for these guys. Whoever wants to recruit these guys with us, like we'll make sure you don't even approach the player. Like I think Oumar took one visit to Indiana and committed. That was it. We heard rumblings that Cal was in it for some reason. That obviously he didn't go anywhere else.
Louisville,
right?
I think, was in there. Arkansas.
Yeah, all these teams were in there. He took one visit. Was like, you know what? I got a bag
upstairs, nice. It's nice. 70-degree temps are nice.
I mean, the perfect weekend to visit. By the way, I mean, you cannot visit at a better weekend than like the lead up to Little Five. This is not. This IU's got something cooking right around here, and I think, look, if the program starts to kind of get rolling, and we kind of get back into the international, into the national narrative, and now international, since I count
right.
Okay, international narrative. This recruiting weekend is going to be an absolute coup for us, right? Like, because again, this comes right after the season's done. If you're winning games, let's say you make it to the Final Four next year, all of your first or couple visits are going to be, hey, you can help us win a championship. Oh yeah, by the way, here's Little Five, right? So like, you just got to get the ball rolling, and once the ball starts rolling, it's going to be like a snowball, right? And this is a snowball effect. So anyways, back to Oumar. Ballo is a baller, straight up. He is. Now, Arizona fans will saltily say that he is a tap-in merchant, which
I'll take it.
That's what I said. That's the first thing I said, is that I will take that instantly. That means he's absolutely a beast on the boards, which is what this team needs. And now I'm going to go into why he fits this need so well. But I think if you go and I'm not saying that the staff is trying to copy UConn, because it's impossible to just straight up steal the UConn blueprint. All right. You need guys like Alex Karaban. There isn't a guy like Alex Karaban on here. I saw somebody try to convince a Discord group that Alex Karaban was like Malik Renew. They are not alike. Don't even try to do that. You have to have guys like
Tristan Newton.
Tristan Newton.
He's amazing.
Right? Amazing. You don't have a Tristan Newton.
He's going to go underdrafted, and whoever gets him is going to make the playoffs next year or win in the playoffs next year. They have Tristan Newton on their team.
The top 6 players on that roster, Indiana doesn't have a player like, and so you can't copy that.
But they don't have a coach like Hurley either.
They also don't have a coach like Hurley. But what you can replicate is the strength of their team, which their strength of their team was rebounding, right? You had a guy in Klingon, and you had a group of guards and forwards that were all, on a mission to get offensive and defensive rebounds whenever the, possibility arose. And so you go and look at, you just went and got one of the 5-10 best rebounders in all of college basketball at all levels, right? And Ballo, and then you're adding him to, a guy who, by the way, was supposed to be really good at rebounding out of high school in Malik Renew, and then you're hopefully going to be adding another guy in Mbako who improved his rebounding as the year went on last year and is oversized for his position.
And Rice and Galloway can do
And
things there,
Rice
and
and
we'll see if
Galloway can do
Carlisle
it.
can build that up in his repertoire. Like, now we're talking.
But the thing about rebounding is, right, it creates second chance opportunities. And so that's why it's important to go get guys who have shot the ball a lot in the past. So you go get a guy like Carlisle, you go get a guy like Rice to bring in. And you know what? If they miss a shot, that's not the end of the world.
Exactly.
Because you have three guys underneath and one dude who's just an immovable object trying to get the ball. And so it doesn't matter that he shoots 56% from the free throw line. I could care less because he's going to foul so many people out next year trying to, move him out of the lane. Think, a la Edie this year, right? Where he's a guy who just sits there. You can't move him. He moves you around and he can get the ball however he likes it, right? And so this is going to be Indiana team that relies a lot on outside shots and then second chance opportunities. And those are going to come for Ballo, right? And so I really like his fit with this roster. And then also you can throw a bunch of different lineups around him, right? Like,
yes,
you don't have to have Malik Renew
or
out
without
there.
him.
Yeah, you can go in a lineup without him. You can put Mbako at the 4, and then you can spread the floor even more. You can go and you can sit him, and you can play Malik Renew at the 5, and you can play Mbako at the 4, and then you can play 3 guards. There's so many different ways. And then you can bring Ballo back in, and they can kind of switch and like I'm expecting Mbako to basically play 40 minutes next year, but the likes of Renew and
with Rice, if you ask me.
Yeah. Rice will probably play a majority of the time as well. But the two bigs we have, Renew and Ballo, they're gonna play like probably 25, 30 minutes a game, right? And then they're gonna be interchanging between which position they are gonna be playing, and they're gonna be resting for each other, right? So we'll get a couple lineups with them together, but we're gonna get a lot of lineups where I think Renew is playing the 5, and then we're gonna get a lot of lineups where Ballo's the lone big with Mbako being that kind of stretch 4. You're going to get a lot of different lineups. And then especially because you have a guy like Trey Galloway off the bench who's going to come in and play a little bit from the 3rd guard spot, right? Or you have a guy like Kanan Carlisle who can, play multiple different positions along the guard spot, and so can Myles Rice.
Rice
and then maybe
Tucker,
you go get a guy,
Cups, right?
Like Rice and Tucker can come in and play the 3. There's so many different people that can come in and fill positions for this team and fill needs. And that's what I'm looking for a roster. And then it's just a collection of talent, right? And then it's up to Woody to kind of as the season goes on, shorten the rotation, find the best guys, find the best fits, find the best lineups, and then let's go for 40 minutes, right, in an NCAA tournament game with all the marbles on the line, with these guys battling out in a Hoosier uniform. I like what they're doing. I
100%,
really do.
100%. And we had a tweet about this over on Indiana HQ that went totally crazy over the last 24 hours or so, where 40 days ago, well, now it's 41 days ago, Liam McNeely decommitted from Indiana. And I remember we had a podcast and we were on It Right's Twitter space, and I saw the social media interaction, and everyone was in a pretty depressed state of mind, and I understand why. But this is why when you and I talked through this, we said, look, if this is a wake-up call to the staff, it's going to be all right. And they have used the McNeely news and missing the NCAA tournament as a kick in the pants and a wake-up call. And look, the NIL is backed in, and the the Big Ten, it's gonna have some changes this upcoming season. This first step you had, and we said this, you can go find our podcast from 4 or 5 episodes ago where we talked about this when this news came through. You had to get your current guys back, and Galloway's back, and Leal's back, and Mbako's back, and Renew's back. And then you go out and you not only find talented players, but talented players that can fit what you want to do in your system. And there is no better fit for Mike Woodson's system than a 5 who kicks butt. Like that is Mike Woodson's bread and butter. It started with Trace, and Kel'el Ware was exceptional last season, and he was Indiana's best player last season. He's going to be picked in the first round of the NBA draft. And Oumar Ballo, who according to 24/7 Sports is the #1 transfer available across the sport, he felt like Indiana was the best place for him. So a lot of good positivity flowing in the Indiana basketball universe, and I'm leaning into it. And I'm tipping my cap to the head coach Mike Woodson and the staff for realizing that major moves needed to take place, and going out and getting Myles Rice and Oumar Ballo fits those requirements. Last year, Ballo, who played 26 minutes per game, started all 36 games for Arizona last year. They were a top 10 team throughout the whole season, if not a top 5 team throughout the whole year, largely thanks to his contributions. 12.9 points per game, 10.1 rebounds per game. He averaged a steal a game, a block a game, and stayed on the court. He only averaged 2 fouls per contest. When he came off the court, it was due to rest. It was due to some unique lineups that Tommy Lloyd had. And you could see that it helped the Arizona Wildcats in the big picture accumulate an outstanding record over the course of this past season. Ballo has 1 year remaining. He started 71 of 71 games for Arizona over the last 2 seasons. Formerly played at Gonzaga, 2-time All Pac-12 honoree, 2-time All Pac-12 tournament honoree, Pac-12 All Defense, most improved player a couple years ago in that conference. I can't wait to see him wear an Indiana Hoosier uniform. There are questions about, okay, how are he and Renew going to fit? I'm not too concerned about that right now. Okay, defensively, will there be questions? Yeah, sure. But you can mix and match players, just like Matt said. You can find rotation, spots and shifts where Ballo gets a little bit of rest, and then he comes back onto the court, and that's when Malik Renew gets a rest. And I can't wait to see Ballo step right into that lob catcher role. Find a way to use Malik Renew's passing ability to help Ballo put points on the table. And then, from a non-scoring standpoint, he fits a lot of issues that Indiana had this past season. He's going to help Indiana win the foul game, which is something that they've struggled to do over the last couple of years, even with Trace Jackson Davis. Draw more fouls from your opponents, commit less fouls on your side, and then the rebounding on both sides of the court is going to be a godsend for this team because, as we've said on this podcast before, Indiana is actually decent at doing their job defensively, from their assignment situation, from their matchup situation. They got better at defending the arc as last year progressed. But far too frequently, they would give up a second chance on the opposing offensive glass. Or if they missed a shot on the other end of the court, they wouldn't be able to grab an offensive rebound and get a fresh shot clock and hit the dagger 3 coming out of an offensive rebound because, for whatever reason, they just didn't have players or a system that really catered to that. I'm looking forward to seeing Mike Woodson make some tweaks as far as the rebounding game plan is concerned, and having Oumar Ballo go out there and get 10 rebounds a game for this Indiana team. I think it's going to be a huge upgrade. In addition to, as I've said before, the leadership aspect. Can't wait for a COVID senior to be added to this team and really, really help the Hoosiers thrive on and off the court from a leadership standpoint, whether or not he plays 30 minutes in a game or 24 minutes a game or 18 minutes a game or whatever the case may be. Matt, as I look at this, I kind of see an Andre Drummond type of feel as far as Oumar Ballo is concerned. I don't know if Ballo is going to end up making it to the NBA, but a couple of UConn centers from years past, Drummond, Adama Sanogo, I get that kind of feeling as far as Oumar Ballo is concerned. We're not going to rebuild UConn, but as you sit here and you think about who Oumar Ballo of which player Oumar Ballo reminds you of, is there anyone that stands out as far as Hoosiers, as far as college, as far as NBA is concerned?
Oh, this is a much easier question, TBH, because Ballo is, he's just gigantic, right?
Huge.
So no, I'm not going to say he's like Edie. That would be ridiculous. He's nowhere in the same hemisphere as Edie. Edie's
Michael Durr.
I think we're gonna look back. Yeah, well, Michael Durr is what the last big 7-footer that Indiana's had, and then before that, who's the last 7-footer that Indiana had before Michael Durr? Do you remember this? Because we talked about this when Durr committed.
Wow. It was Peter Jerkin? I don't know that because they're not going to compare Ballo to Jerkin. So,
I think it's Vonleh, right?
oh, I like it. Okay.
And so that's where I'm gonna go with this. This is from a rebounding perspective, he's a lot like Vonleh. And he's big bodied, 7 feet tall. But it's a tough comparison
It's tough.
because
Yeah.
Vonleh was a freshman, right, when he played. And then also just was a more, how do I put this, well together
According to
but
stats, he's 6'10.
younger.
6'10. Yeah.
Vonleh's 6'10.
Whatever. Close
Interesting.
enough. Holy shit.
Whatever. I don't.
Round
I love
round
being wrong on this podcast. It's my favorite thing.
up.
Um, but no, I mean Indiana really hasn't had a big like this. Maybe DJ White a little bit back in the day before we're going.
Well, I think this is what's exciting about Rice and Ballo, right? It's like you sit here and you go, Indiana really hasn't had like Miles Rice isn't like Jalen Hood Shafino. He's not
No,
like Yogi Ferrell. He's not like
nope.
Jordan Halls. He's not like Steve Alford. He's not like anybody Indiana's had before. Same thing
Neither
with Oumar
neither
Ballo.
Ballo. I don't think Ballo's like anybody that we've had for quite a long time. Again, because he's a natural big. That's what he is. When you picture a 7 foot, close to 300 pound
He's
big.
tough as hell, man. He's so he might have a like an MMA career in the future after basketball, and I wouldn't be
That
surprised.
that he's ripped, like absolutely shredded. Yeah, and he's 7 foot 280, and he's like a shredded 280. Like if you put on some pounds and wanted to really muscle some people around, he could probably go and put 20 pounds on easily and be a 300 pounder and just move people. Right. But he's not going to do that because that's not what the staff does. But no, I like Ballo's fit a lot.
Me too.
Um, and I want to say one last thing before I hand it over to you for your comparison.
Mm-hmm.
I know Woodson got a ton of flack, including from us, about his comments on still think the game is played inside out. Um, and I would like I still don't think he's right. Like I still think part of that intuition is flawed. However, I will give him credit on one thing. When I think he said that, I think what he really meant, if I'm inferring it correctly, is that he's talking about rebounding. Because college, unlike the NBA, in the NBA, making shots is expected. Like it's
Sure.
expected to do the sexy thing, which is to put the ball in the basket from the perimeter. In college, it's a luxury if you have that. It's an absolute luxury if you have that, but it's not consistent enough. If you go and you look at the best 3-point shooting teams every single year, more likely than not, those teams are the ones that actually fade out early in the tournament because they have one really bad game. And when you go and look at the best rebounding teams that play in the tournament, those teams are usually the ones that make runs, right? As teams that, team rebound. It's not just talking about one guy. Ballo is not going to just instantly fix all of IU's rebounding problems, but he's going to heavily contribute. Yeah, he's going to definitely help. And going a little bit bigger and being flexible on that end when it comes to rebounding and assignments and all that other jazz is going to help IU be consistently good, right? Because on nights that the shots aren't falling, you're gonna have guys that are going to be able to clean up those misses. Now, you still have to hit shots,
Or you grab the rebound and you reset the offense for another possession. You get 5 more
exactly.
possessions in a game, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, I can live with this. So no, completely agree with what you're saying there. I'm looking forward to seeing Oumar Ballo in an IU uniform. Not only for the on the court contributions, but for how he's going to help guide and lead this team, especially as you get into the real thick of Big Ten tough grinding conference play. What's next? We're going to tell you that in just a second. But first, it's time for our social media shout out, where we're just going to shout out our stuff real quick. Folks can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at Indiana HQ, as well as at the Hoosier Sound on Instagram. Matt, we're not Indiana HQ, but what are we?
Indiana.HQ.
You can find us there. We're going to have all sorts of content and footage for you coming for men's basketball, women's basketball. Spring game is Thursday night for the football team. Kurt Signetti's first appearance coaching something or another at Memorial Stadium on Big Ten Network. So looking forward to seeing that. And then, oh my gosh, so much more as it relates to Indiana sports. So make sure you follow us there. Join the masses, folks. Shout out to all of our new followers since yesterday. We've really ramped up since then. So appreciate all of you. Tell a friend if you haven't already. That word of mouth is really what's going to help us grow this platform as much as anything else. Matt, we've talked about Cannon Carlisle as someone who might potentially join this Indiana team. Everything seems to be trending in the right direction there. We've also heard about Connor Essegian. We've heard about Ben Humrichhouse. We've heard about potential Grace College player Elijah Malone on this Indiana team. The Hoosiers do have a few scholarship spots available. Do you like the approach they're taking as far as the last few guys left on this roster, or do you think they need to really do something different as they look to really add some guys in a bench role or potentially one more starter?
This is a tough question because I think it depends on the player that they get in the portal. I think if you go out and you get a Ryan Conwell, I think it's hard to tell him that he's not going to be starting, and there's going to be some tough decisions made as far as the transfers that are coming in, like one of the sophomore guards, right? Because I said Carlisle's already coming, guys. Like that, this is well known at this point. And I will stand on that hill that he or die on that hill that he is coming. Carlisle, and Rice are going to have tough conversations. I think more Carlisle than Rice will have a tough conversation about coming off the bench, which is insane to me, by the way. But if you can convince that guy that he's better off the bench playing, a role with Galloway, all of a sudden our guard depth goes from what going into this next season was Gabe Cupps and Trey Galloway to Carlisle and Galloway off the bench, right? And playing Conwell at the 2, and then playing Mbako at the 3, bringing in one of those guys as a third guard, maybe playing Conwell as the third guard. There's a lot going on there. Essegian, who's a guy that I'm hearing really good things about right now as things stand on a, well, for me it's Thursday morning, but for Wednesday night for you guys.
Yeah.
If Essegian does truly decide to commit to the Hoosiers sometime in the next couple days, what's his role like? Is he coming off the bench? Is he starting? You saw him start at Wisconsin, or at least get major minutes contributing his freshman year. And then you saw what he did this year in a very, very limited role at Wisconsin, where he barely played comparatively to his freshman year. How is that going to work? You got to go get a backup big. I've heard rumors that they're looking for somebody that can stretch the floor from the big position. I think is a Humongous
Humrichhouse. Ben
Humrichhouse, yes. So he's an interesting guy to look at if you're interested. I don't know how to spell his name. Don't even try me. But Humrichhouse, you can probably find an article on him somewhere by one of the Indiana sites, including maybe our own at some point. But yeah, he's a guy that they're looking at. There's just a lot of different moving pieces, but I think right now when you look at what we have as a roster, and if you add in Carlisle, you have a solid 9 to 10 guys that can play. If you can add another 2 to that, then not only is the competition for playing spots and playing time going to be really high in practice, but then also the output on the court is going to be really high, because it's really going to be the guys that rise to the top, that play the most, play hard in practice and try their best and are learning and absorbing all the information that Woody and the staff give them the best, will be playing. And I do trust the staff in figuring that out. They figured out that Leal was a solution to a lot of the problems last year. And I give them a lot of It took a minute, but I give him credit for eventually coming up with the
Yeah, okay.
with the answer, right? Because they very well could have just kept Leal down there on the bench and never played the guy, right? Because he hadn't really played a serious role for Indiana at all. And a season before, even when he did play, was kind of shaky at best. So, he kind of came off the bench. They kind of found a role for him. They're going to find a role for all these guys, and they're going to find a way to make them play and work together. I trust Woodson and the staff to do that.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of who's that going to be. But yeah, I'm hearing good things about Esigian. I'm very, very much in on Carlisle being a Hoosier. And I think that might be the guards. And
that's fine. I'm good
that's
with that.
fine. I'm okay with that. I really wanted Conwell because I think Conwell is the guy that could end up being the best transfer.
Conwell would be crazy if we got him in a good way.
No, I know. I think he's a top 2 transfer. I think he might even be better than at the end of the day next year than Ballo. Seriously,
yeah,
I think he'll. Because I think when you look at it, Ballo's the unanimous #1 guy in the portal for most people. I said that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. I just said he's the unanimous
for most people.
Pause. He's unanimous. When you look at portal rankings, he's #1 for everybody. And I have yet to find one where he's not #1. And I think that's because he's the safe pick. Conwell would be up there.
Yeah.
If he's not really the safe pick, right? He balled out this year at Indiana State, but how well is that going to translate, or how is his output going to translate to a Power 5 conference where you're playing, high level guys, night in, night out, every day during conference play. So, but I think he can. And, Ant and I have talked about and gushed over him and how aggressive he is for a guard. Like, it's not just that he's does everything really well. It's that he does everything very well aggressively. And that's what you really want in a guard. Whoever gets him is going to get an absolute killer. I just pray to God it's not Purdue.
Or in the Big Ten. Yeah, I really like Conwell as well. I think Isaiah Swope was somebody who sort of grabbed the headlines for Indiana State this past season, as well as Robbie Avila. But you can go back and listen to a podcast episode we had, I think, maybe a few weeks ago. Conwell was the guy I was really, really interested in. He's an excellent rebounder, very good mover of the basketball. He can score multiple levels. I'd love to see that. Indiana has 4 scholarship spots available after Oumar Ballo's commitment. So, if you say Kane Carlisle's feeling pretty good, that's a 3rd. And so that means 3 are remaining. And then, Esigian, Umric House. Who else? Is it Conwell? Who else could potentially join this team? Elijah Malone, of course, we haven't gotten into too much, but he would also be another intriguing addition. Indiana, bottom line, needs to revamp their bench. Okay. And for the person who commented to our tweet saying, wow, Indiana is going to miss Caleb Banks and CJ Gunn and Peyton Sparks. Look, Indiana had major issues last year from a bench standpoint. If you put a couple guys in off the bench, especially when they weren't named Anthony Leal, you were really digging yourself into a rough situation. So, I don't need Indiana to have a 13-man rotation. I need Indiana to have 7, 8 reliable guys that they can play on a nightly basis. And last year they had 3, 4, 5 tops if Anthony Leal was feeling good on a particular night. So that's how we see things as far as this Indiana men's basketball program is concerned. As we wind down here on this Wednesday night, Matt, any final thoughts as it relates to IU basketball? They had a wake-up call with McNeely's decommitment. Think they're on the right track here as far as the first few additions to this roster.
Yeah, they're cooking. All right, guys, straight up. The staff is working the transfer portal very well. And I think the staff got a lot of crap from me and Nathan and from the rest of Hoover Nation right after McNeely decommitted. And I will be the first one to admit that I was wrong, even though I did kind of back up the decision at the time. I'd like to point that out. I did. I said that this might be a good thing in the long term.
Yep.
Or the short term for Indiana. And it's true.
You did.
Recruiting freshmen is actually just genuinely pointless at this point in college basketball. I'm serious. And it's a big problem. I think the NCAA is putting in a measure now or alleviating a rule where players can transfer at any time. to another school, which I think would be absurd, by the way, and that needs to not be passed because that's just this is already chaos, and that will just make it absolute pandemonium. Don't need to do that whatsoever. But that could be a 40-minute podcast on its own. I will say that recruiting freshmen is basically pointless when you're a school like Indiana. If you can push around money like this enough, you can go and get a free agent roster every single year that's going to be better and more consistent and less risky, right? Than freshmen. Straight up. They are. Now, will you have the glamorous, oh, we have 75 NBA players playing in the playoffs this weekend? No, you're not going to have that like Kentucky does, right? Where like half the rosters in the NBA are filled with Kentucky guys. That's not going to happen. But what you will have is hopefully a bunch of Sweet 16s and Elite Eights and Final Four appearances if you can build the roster correctly. Now, again, I think I've said this about a billion times. We need somebody that was a former NBA GM or an NBA front office guy to come and be the GM of the team. I don't know who that could be. I'm not even going to start a list of names. DJ White, maybe. That's a name you could throw out there, but you need somebody that has roster building, serious roster building, year by year experience.
Mark Cuban.
Yeah, Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban did sell his company recently, so
Lawrence Frank, former IU manager. You see what he's up to. I don't know if he's a current assistant in the NBA. But
exactly. We need somebody that can help build a roster because the transfer portal is slowly becoming like NBA free agency, right? Like, but without the long-term contract. So there's just a year contract for each person. I think they're also trying to change that you can get a multi-year contract. I don't really know if that's something I saw as a rumor or is it a serious thing.
Rumor right now.
Rumor right now, yeah. But as far as things go, like you can build a roster from the portal every single year and you never have to recruit another freshman again. I'm not saying that Indiana is going to do this because the 2025 class is loaded and has a bunch of really good guys from in-state, including a guy like Jalen Harrelson, who I think would do wonders in his first year as a freshman at Indiana. So you might see names, or Braylon Mullins or Trent Sisley. Like these are names that you could see thrown around as freshmen. But if Indiana misses some of them, I don't think it's the end of the world because you can go get a guy like a Myles Rice or an Oumar Ballo, or you can go get a Kel'el Ware, or you can go get a Miller Kopp. You can go get guys that come in and are a finished product.
Sure.
And in the case of Myles Rice, he's not even a finished product yet, but you can go get a guy that's going to be a seasoned vet or at least have a year under his belt that's going to have a higher potential and higher floor than any of the freshman guards you could have gotten. Because IU could have gone and tried to go after Boogie Fland again, right? They try to go get Boogie Fland, then he goes to Kentucky, Cal leaves, he's up on the market again, right? They could have gone and got a guy like that, but then they saw Myles Rice is available and they're like, this guy's an all Pac-12 first teamer as a freshman, right? We can go get him instead of, Boogie Fland, who I'm sure is going to kill it at Arkansas next year, right? Nice. I'm sure he's going to kill it for Cal at Arkansas.
Yeah.
But
I see what you did.
But he's not a finished product yet. He doesn't even have the experience yet. He's going to go through all the ups and downs the freshmen go to. You don't have to do that with Myles Rice. That's not going to happen.
Exactly.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah, no, totally fair. From my standpoint, I don't think you need to win. I don't think you need to have 5 3-point shooters on the court to win in college basketball.
No.
I know that might offend some people. I think you need to have some 3-point shooting, no question. I think you need to have guys who can catch and shoot. I think you need to have guys who can create threes off the dribble. I think you need to have guys who can grab offensive rebounds to kick out to the arc for threes. I think you need to have guys who are confident in hitting threes in transition, whether it's the classic Yogi pull-up three or doing it in a different way, whether it's, is he sprinting to the corners and being ready there. You need to add, it's not about adding 3-point shooters. It's about adding good players. And Indiana has gone out over the last couple of weeks. They've added good players, really good players, Myles Rice and Oumar Ballo. And for those of you who think a lack of 3-point shooting is why Indiana was bad last year, That's not the answer. Indiana was bad last year because their old players weren't good enough. And there's going to be a time in a couple of seasons where the COVID seniors move off and college basketball will get younger. But at least for this upcoming year, you need to have good old players to win. And Oumar Ballo is going to fit that mold. And Trey Galloway is going to fit that mold because he's not been through it for a few years. Malik Renew is going to be going into his third season of college basketball. Myles Rice has been in the college game. This is going to be his second year as a player, but he's been in the college game now for a fourth season coming up. Now we're talking. Indiana needs their old players to be elite at their position, to be elite in the Big Ten, and it looks like things are trending in that direction. We'll see if it actually comes to fruition when these guys start playing games. But until then, having good old players is your fastest path to success. Folks, that about wraps it up for a 327 show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ or at the Hoosier Sound to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find it all in one place. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we will see you next time.
Peace and love, go Hoosiers.